Hey y'all, welcome to the B Channel podcast where my objective is to bless, edify, and encourage others to live their best lives. Before we dive into today's episode, be sure to follow and or subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes of this podcast. And be sure to share this episode with a friend if it blesses you. You can also catch up with me at B Channel 27 on all my socials. As usual, I will include my link in the description below. Now, today I have a special guest on the show with me. And just to tell you a little bit about her name is Samantha King. And she says, Jesus met me in my mess and turned my mess into a message and my test into my testimony. He has shown me he is more than enough, and I was always meant to thrive, not just survive. To God be the glory. Now, at the end, I will tell you how you can catch up with Miss Samantha King on her socials. But for now, let's get into today's episode. Tell the good people how we met Samantha.
So, yes, we met in nursing school. 2011. It's like been so long. Even before that, probably. I started at Widener in 2008. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's been a while.
Yes.
But yeah, we've connected recently just basically through social media. The wonderful world of social media. And things that I've shared and things that you've shared, we definitely have some common interests, in faith and mental health. So it's awesome that we've gotten to connect that way. Because God will use anything. So
Yes. So, I have one question for you to start things off.
Mhm.
When you think of faith and mental health, what comes to mind?
So, what comes to mind for me is how faith and mental health have literally become the biggest topics in my life. I guess I'll start with how mental health, basically, and faith and probably both, yeah, have come to the forefront for me. So in 2021, I started to actually probably even before that. Let me start back in probably 2019, actually. So my dad actually was having he had a heart attack, and praise God he's still alive, because I'm not even sure how he survived considering he waited 5 days to go to the emergency room.
Hmm.
So that kind of started me with having I was starting to have panic attacks. And I think it stemmed from the fact that when I was 17, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, lung cancer, stage 4 lung cancer, and she actually passed in 2007.
Hmm.
So I think I was starting to just my body was remembering all of those emotions that I had when my mom got sick. And then I started to experience the same things once my dad, his health started to take a toll. And it was really hard because my dad and I aren't very close. And I was basically the only person that he had to help him. So it was like I was having a lot of emotions with that I just didn't know how to process. So that kind of started it with having more anxiety, even though I've kind of had baseline anxiety probably my whole life, but we'll get to that. Um, so that was 2019. Then, of course, COVID happened, in 2020. And so then some things were happening in my life. The job that I held at that time was very, very stressful. Then my younger brother had actually moved in with me, who he has an alcohol problem. So it was a lot of things going on at once. There was issues in my marriage and stuff too. So I really, probably 2021 is when I started having really bad anxiety, panic attacks where I would wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing, couldn't sleep, pacing the house, just and I didn't really know like what was going on because all my life, like I said, I've had anxiety, but it was always something I felt I could control. So on September 29th, 2021, it was my third day of missing work. And I was, in this routine of waking up, not being able to sleep, and just probably like sometime in the late morning, like I would end up like taking a nap or whatever. And I remember that day specifically, I laid in bed and just bawled my eyes out. Just, you know, I was like, I was so tired of everything. I just felt like my whole life was crashing down around me. Like everything was falling apart. I didn't know what to do. And I laid in bed and just cried out to God. And I said, God, please, like, just let me die in my sleep. Just let me die. And at that point in my life, I didn't have a relationship with God. I believed in God, but I definitely wasn't walking with him. And
Mhm.
so that was the last thing I thought to do was just to cry out to God. Well, my first hint that he heard me should have been that I didn't end up going to sleep like I had done the prior 2 days. So later on that day, I remember walking from my kitchen to my living room, and like I was stopped dead in my tracks, and I heard, not with my ears, but I heard, "You have a purpose." And I remember thinking, did that just happen? Because I heard it. And the only way I can describe it is, like it was, I don't know, just like I said, I couldn't hear it with my ears, but like it was like spoken to my heart. So that's when I'm like, all right, God must have heard me, So that kind of started things for my faith. I kind of had a Jonah moment where I'm like, oh, I can still handle everything going on in my life. Clearly, though, I could not. So it wasn't until 2022 where January 1st, I was like, all right, I had this Bible that I had gotten like the year before and I'd never opened it. So, and my Bible had a reading plan in it where you could read the Bible in a year. So I literally just started from Genesis, read the passages that were in the book, the outline, and I had gotten a devotional, which the devotional I had also bought on a whim. Obviously, we know it's not on a
Mm.
whim, it was God's plan. I had literally bought it in 2020. Um, I don't know why I got it, but it's called God Hears Her. And, it's these different devotionals from different women. And that kind of just started my journey. I wasn't in church. Like I didn't grow up in the church. My family's not religious or anything like that. And I only had one friend at the time who was a Christian, and she had been praying for me, through this whole thing, all the stuff that I was going through. And thank God she was, she was a big part of that. Um, so yeah, so that kind of started my faith and mental health journey because I had started with like working out. So like physically I was doing better. I had gotten into therapy. I did like intensive group outpatient therapy to work on my mind, because so connected to that, from my childhood, I also now realize that I grew up in a house that was, my dad's an alcoholic. So like I grew up being the daughter of an alcoholic, which I had no idea had put in these like subconscious beliefs. I basically, without realizing it, I was living a life where I didn't think I was lovable. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I was worthy of anything. I basically lived my life very small, quiet, just didn't want to be in, the tension of anything. Like I lived in survival mode my whole life, all based on how I grew up. And not only did I grow up with fear inside my home, I grew up in an area where there was a lot of violence, drugs, that my safety was constantly always in question, because whether it was, somebody breaking into our home, which happened 3 times throughout my life, And then also fearing my dad, because my dad, was a very angry man. So there was a lot of fighting in my home, a lot, stuff like that. So yeah, 2021 was basically when I finally figured out that, everything I had gone through as a child and then what I was currently going through as an adult, it all mashed together. And basically my body was just like, okay, we can't do this anymore. Because like I said, my anxiety, I kind of always was able to stuff it down and kind of, push past it. And but this now I couldn't. My body was completely out of my control. And yeah.
I hear you. It sounds like you went through a lot, and it's while you were talking, I thought about Jonah too because I
Mm,
recently talked about Jonah
okay,
on
yeah.
the podcast that I do on wisdom, and it was so interesting when you said it. 'Cause I was like, I thought of him because he was
Wow.
so frustrated with God
Yes.
in that moment. That's all he wanted. He was so angry. That was
Mhm.
all he wanted. And he just couldn't understand how God could do what he did
Mhm. Mhm.
and like help these people that didn't seem like they were worthy of help and
Mm.
redemption and salvation
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
mercy. And I was just like, wow, that's it was like that was the exact person I thought about when you were talking about that. And
Yeah, totally. I mean, because it was just like, and that point, like I said, like I didn't have a walk, you know,
right.
and I just believed in God. But I also realize now through everything that I've gone through with my mental health, like I believe God was good. I just believed he was good for everybody else. So,
That's
like,
good.
had I ever said that verbally? No, but like as I look at how I viewed God like how I viewed the world, with a broken lens, because of all the trauma that I've had in my life, that like I basically put that on God too. So I think that's why, even though God spoke to me in that moment, like my brain wasn't processing, wow, God just told me I have a purpose. Because I'm like, my whole life I figured I was so insignificant. Like if my own father didn't, care to know me or love me the way I should have been, why would God?
You know
So
what's funny though? Because we've been talking about this. The Garden Within. It
mm,
explores this a lot.
mm-hmm,
That now for everybody who's listening, I recently did a review on The Garden Within. So if y'all want to go back and listen to that, please do because
mm,
that book is everything. But specifically, when you said that, it made me think about how Dr. Anita Phillips, who wrote The Garden Within, she
mm-hmm.
said that we project how we feel about our human relationships onto God.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's really not fair because humans cannot live up to an infallible God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like two different things, and we're expecting to get fulfilled and satisfied by this person that really couldn't even do it to begin with. That's not
Yep.
how they were even created.
Yep.
So, it's our nature to want the person to satisfy us, but they really can't.
Exactly. Yep.
And so, what were you taught about faith and mental health? Were you ever taught anything about these two topics, like by anybody, like in passing, TV, anything?
Honestly, like I want to say no, but like so I like, and this is God too. So like even though like I grew up, a hot mess basically, one thing is my parents did want to make sure that my brother and I got an education. So they put us in a private Christian school, and I was in a Christian school from kindergarten through 12th grade. So
Mm,
that's God's blessing, because I don't even know how we afforded it. But so like I said, I didn't grow up like hearing things in my home, but like one of the things like I feel like stuck with me, and and I'm sure a lot of people feel this way, is like for faith and mental health, like I always believed that Christians had like, the perfect lives. They should be happy all the time. Like they shouldn't have anger or sadness, because like, oh, if
right.
you're Christian, you have God, like everything should be good. Well, as we know, that is the furthest
Hmm.
thing from the truth. But like, my little brain, considering what I went through at home, and I'm like, okay, my friends have way different home lives than I do. Like, I just don't think that these two things go together. Um, but yeah, I don't know. in my own home, like as far as like big emotions and things, obviously, like we never talked about, really deep things that were going on in my life.
Mhm.
Emotions were just kind of like pushed under the rug. And I remember like I was always, the sensitive kid or whatever. And I remember like, crying like that was like a no no. Oh, you don't cry, you don't have to cry and stuff like
Mm.
that. But yeah, I don't really remember being taught anything specific as far as like the two. Just from my own experience, I just figured, there was something wrong with me because if I had all these wide range of emotions that my in my home life were considered unacceptable, like to me, then I thought that was unacceptable to God as well.
Mm. Oh my goodness, sis, you are preaching right now because like when I think about what you said about having unacceptable emotions, I
Mm,
literally just posted on my story on Instagram about how we have to stop stigmatizing or making people feel bad about crying. We have to
yes.
allow people to cry,
Mm-hmm.
and that even goes back to the garden within again because she really did a great job of pointing out how in Hebrews Jesus is our high priest, but he can
Mm-hmm.
sympathize with us in our
Yep.
weaknesses. He felt everything that we felt, but yet he did not sin.
Yep.
So it was like so eye-opening, and it seems like such a simple revelation, but when you really stop to think about it, there were so many times when Jesus showed emotions. Like when he went
Absolutely.
into the marketplace and he saw the people doing what he didn't
Mm-hmm.
like, he turned over those tables. What
Yep.
was that? That was
Sure did.
anger.
Yep.
When he was upset, like he was upset about things, he had righteous anger, and
Mm-hmm.
God didn't say, "Oh, don't feel that," or He didn't say, He never apologized, about
Right.
how he felt. And like even when he was in the garden and he didn't want to die, he was like, "Man, if you could take this cup from
Yeah,
me, Lord, please
yeah,
do that.
that's
But
that's some
not
anxiety
my
right
will, but
there.
your will." Okay. So he was out here crying to the point of blood being released
Yes.
from his body.
Exactly.
So this
Exactly.
man felt things, okay?
Mhm.
Even though he was divine, he was also human.
Yep.
So we have to understand that if he felt things, it's okay for us to feel
Oh
things
my
too.
gosh, exactly. And that for me, like getting into the word and like really reading it and learning the heart of God, it's like, wow, he
Yeah.
created us with all these emotions. Like, you know, and like you said, like he felt them all too, but he did not sin. So it's like, okay, like
Hmm.
anger's not wrong. It's what you do with it.
Right.
Just like sadness, that's okay too. And like, yeah, like the
Right.
whole thing with like, people crying, like I remember most of my life being very uncomfortable when people would cry because to me it was, and I, was taught like it's not a good thing, you don't cry.
Mm.
But now I'm like, if somebody's crying, I'm like, let it out because it is
Yes.
so like it's a
Cathartic.
release. Exactly. You just purge that sadness out. I'm like, let it out.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It literally says in Psalm 56:8 that he collects our tears. So if tears were
Mm-mm.
bad, why would he collect them, and why would he say that we could
Truth.
why would it be there? And why would David be
Exactly.
crying? Okay? David
Mm-hmm.
was out here crying too, okay? He was going
Exactly.
through. So we have to really take notice of those moments
For
throughout
sure.
scripture.
For sure.
So what do you think are some of your biggest challenges when it comes to faith and mental health?
Oh gosh. So, I mean, I definitely still struggle sometimes with like, that I am not my emotions, or my
Ooh,
thoughts.
so
You
good.
um I still struggle with that, because all my life I thought like I was my anxiety, like I was, these big emotions that I felt. But it's like, no, like you can have these emotions,
Mhm.
let yourself feel them, and you work through it. Like I can actually say, okay, if I'm feeling angry right now, I can take a step back from it and be like, okay, why am I feeling this way?
Mm.
So, but again, being human, I
Right.
sometimes will get stuck into my anxiety. Even this podcast, like I literally was like starting to feel so anxious about it. And I'm like, why? Why am I feeling anxious? And I'm like, just it's okay. I can be anxious and work through it, and so yeah, those are my some of my biggest challenges, and still like not feeling shame sometimes for feeling anxious about
Right.
things, like, so and it's like, why if even if I am, like, I can bring it to God. He already knows. He already knows what my thoughts are. He already knows what I'm feeling. So, like,
Right.
if I'm feeling it, just bring it to him. Don't try to hide it because we can't. So
Right. And you know what? When you said about how you can feel things but not be them,
mhm,
it made me think of this guy. His name is he's a I think he's like a life coach or he's a therapist. His
mhm.
name is Dr. Delatoro McNeil.
Okay.
And that's DELATORROMCNEAL. And he was on the Dear Future Wifey podcast. I love that
Okay.
podcast so much. Um, he said he was one of the persons that really brought to mind this whole concept of dialectical thinking, which means that
Mm,
two things can be true at the same time. So I
yes.
can be anxious, but it's okay. Like I could be anxious and I can be happy. I could be
Mhm.
excited and I can be sad. Two things can be true, but
Yep.
it doesn't mean like, 'cause sometimes we think we gotta be one thing, and like if we're
Mhm.
mixed, it's a problem. Like we have to
Yep.
fix it, and we have to reconcile ourselves into one emotion. But it's like that's too much. Just let yourself feel what you feel and
Yes.
manage it. Don't let it get out of
Absolutely.
control and dwell, of course, but
Mhm.
manage it.
Yeah, I totally, and I can even see that like with fear, like, like I said, fear was a big thing for me, and I still struggle with that. Um, but like I can still be scared and still do what I need to do. Like you said, have the two emotions you can hold at the same time. And I never got that concept until, until recently, because I'm like, well, no, I shouldn't be fearful at all. I shouldn't have any anxiety at all. And it's like, no, that's not how it works.
But if you really think about it though, they always talk about how throughout the Bible it says fear not 365 times. But think
Mhm.
about this. If we were not if fear was not a thing, like why would he tell you to not do it? Like
Right.
he knows
Right.
that that's going to happen. So that's why he
Yep.
told you one time for each day of the year.
There you
He
go.
told you. So if he keeps saying that, he knows that there's going to be
It's,
something for you. That's
yep.
going to come up.
So true.
So,
So
he
true.
made provision in his word for you to be able to
Mhm.
affirm yourself with those things.
Absolutely.
So,
Mhm.
in your opinion, what are some of the biggest misconceptions? Like I know you alluded to it earlier when you were saying that
Yes.
people think that, oh, you got to be happy all the time because
Yep.
you know God and you love God and you
Yep.
believe in God. You're supposed to be happy. But beyond that, are there any things that you've like heard people say or you
I
like experienced yourself or you thought yourself?
I mean, as far like I've definitely heard, actually just recently I heard a speaker say that she's actually heard somebody in a church tell somebody like, oh, well, if you would have prayed more, your daughter wouldn't have died of,
Oh
whatever.
my
And it's like,
goodness.
and she actually said this. She was like, that's spiritual abuse. And it is, because
It
how can you
is.
say to somebody, well, if you just had more faith, this wouldn't have
Mm.
happened? And it's like, no, like that is not right, like at all. Like, of course, I have faith and I pray, but there's still sometimes where I literally am so anxious. Like, I just put on my worship music, and in that moment, like I
Okay.
could feel the presence of God with me. So it's like, no, like, you don't have to say you don't have enough faith if you struggle with depression, anxiety, or you don't pray enough if you struggle with
Mm.
these things. Like, yeah, that I think is definitely the biggest misconceptions of what people, think between faith and mental health, that, it's, uh, we don't tell people if they break a leg, oh, well, if you have more faith, your leg
Right.
will heal itself. We would say you go to the
Go to the
emergency
doctor.
room. So faith or anxiety and depression is not any different. It's just not something that we can physically see, like a
Hmm.
broken leg. So yeah.
Well, I think about that though, the person saying it, that's crazy because at the end of the day, You can have faith for a lot of things, but if it's out of
Mhm.
alignment with God's will, He is not going to let that thing come to pass like you want. Like,
Absolutely.
so
Yep.
it's like it hurts that it happened, but it's not her fault. It wasn't about
Mhm.
praying enough. It wasn't about
Mhm.
believing enough. If
Right.
God said that it was the child's time, then it was the child's time. As much as it
Right.
hurts, it's very painful.
Mhm.
But it like to indict her like that,
Oh
to put all
gosh.
that pressure on her like that,
Mhm.
that was just wrong.
Right.
So
Right.
if you're out there and somebody has told you that, don't believe that lie
It
that because you didn't
seriously.
have enough faith or you didn't pray enough that something is wrong with you or that you
Mhm.
could have possibly changed God's agenda when it was already preordained before any of us even
Exactly.
came to be.
Yep.
So
Yeah, totally. Yeah, don't ever let anybody tell you, your faith's not big enough if something, happens, because it's like you said it, if it's God's will, there's no way around that. But yeah, to just yeah, it still just blows my mind sometimes, because it still goes on. People still say these things, and it's like, no, like that's wrong. That is totally wrong.
yeah, absolutely. So that brings me to my next question. It's a great segue. As believers in God, what can we do to improve perceptions of faith and mental health?
Honestly, I think it's just being honest with our feelings and not trying to hide, because, like, God knows anyway. And so many people carry so much shame, which makes us want to hide. I mean, look at Adam and Eve in the garden when they sinned, then they realized they were naked. And
Right.
tried to, put the fig leaves and
Hide
exactly. And it's
from an
like,
omnipresent God,
right, right.
all knowing,
Like he
omniscient God.
knew. Like he knows. So it's like, I feel like that's freeing to know, like, to not have to feel like I have to hide. Like, I can actually come to God and not be all, cleaned up, polished, and presented, because no, like, that's just not how it goes. So yeah, I think as believers, it's like, just read the word, really study Jesus, because, like you said, he experienced all these emotions. Like, you see it. He cried, he was afraid, like, when he knew that he was going to die on the cross, like, and he said, if this can be taken from me, please, but let your will be done. So it's like, we don't have to hide. Like, he already knows, and he wants us to come to him. Like, he loves us so much. And whereas, as for me, like, I would be scared to go to anybody to talk about how I would feel as a child, but it's like, wow, I can actually go to the Father, and he's there waiting with open arms. Like,
Right.
there's no condemnation, and that is just so freeing. So I feel like, just sticking to the word and just being in prayer, and really getting to know the heart of God, is as
Ooh.
that's definitely brought brought so much change into my life.
Okay. I mean that like at the end of the day, that honesty and communication, that
Mm,
transparency and communication is
mhm,
everything.
absolutely.
Because if not, then you're going to end up imploding at a later date
Mhm,
and you're going to want to
mhm,
know why. And it's like, well, it's because you never let things like out into
right.
the open. Let it come into the light, and
Mhm,
God can help you with that. He can't help what you're hiding.
exactly.
He can't heal what you won't reveal.
That Oh my gosh, so true. And then that's what happened to me. Like, I got so used to suppressing everything, and it doesn't go away. It
That's
stays
exhausting
there.
too.
Exactly, exactly. Like, to just be, like, authentic, and yeah, it's amazing to go from just surviving to thriving. Is, wow,
Yes,
life changing.
because yeah, you spent it really seemed like you spent your whole life like trying to almost like pretzel yourself up
Mm,
emotionally,
oh
mentally,
my
and just
gosh.
wrap yourself up. And it's like you didn't
Yep.
have any room to like, just
It's
be and breathe.
right.
You were
It's
holding your
it's
breath for your whole life, essentially,
exactly. I
walking on eggshells.
literally a that is the perfect description, and, like, literally being inside my own prison. Like, I just, my mind,
Mm.
everything just being stuck inside my head all the time, and it's like, wow, okay. the door has been opened. Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah,
Let
and
me
you were the
out.
one who had the key the entire time.
Exactly, exactly. The first time I ever did therapy, my therapist told me, she was like, "You have what it takes inside you already." She's like, "I'm just going to help you uncover it." And that is the complete truth.
That was
Complete truth.
so beautiful.
Mhm.
And when you said that about being a prisoner, like being your own prisoner, it really
Mhm.
brought to mind Zechariah 9 verse 12. Come back
Mhm.
to the place of safety, all you prisoners who still have hope. I promise this very
Mhm.
day that I will repay 2 blessings for each of your troubles.
Woo, girl. Ooh, that is good.
Yeah, I remember when Christine Kane put me onto that thing. I was like, "Ooh, I love that," because that's the only
Ooh,
thing that we really need to try to be prisoners of. We're gonna be prisoners of anything. Let's be a prisoner of expectation that God
yeah.
will give us good things as a good father.
Woo! And oh my gosh, yes, because literally in my own life, as I know now the heart of God, I'm like, wow, we have, like, He literally wants to give us blessing after blessing. And it's like, if we just step back from ourselves, like,
Mm.
we're our own worst enemies and we get in our own way. And if we just got out of our own way and looked to Jesus, I mean,
Oof.
mm,
Yes. That brings me to the question, how important is it to have community, and how does the faith and mental health conversation, the relationships?
oh, wow. So for me, like I said, I started this journey last year, and I all I had basically were books, podcast. My one friend who's a Christian, like, when we would talk about, different things. God has literally put me in a place, like, I'm in this new church. I started going in March of this year, and that's just by God. Like, He reconnected me with one of my really good friends from my childhood. um
Oh.
oh my gosh, it's truly amazing. um and we both of us got led to this church, and the community there has been one of the biggest things for me. Like, genuine people who are open and honest, caring, compassionate, just authentic. The love is
Mm.
so genuine. Like, I really feel like I can be myself. And we've made friends with a few people, and it's like, I feel like I've known these girls like my whole entire life, and it's just because of how open and authentic they are. Like, they don't water things down. Like,
Mhm.
they speak the truth in love. They build people up, and that is just so important, to have a community that will speak life to you. um
Okay.
oh my gosh, like, I could go on and on.
Okay.
um
For
you know
real.
like,
Because sometimes we try to do life in isolation, like we are island unto ourselves, but
yes,
it's just not possible to continue that way. And, for
right.
somebody like me, I'm a caregiver, but
Mhm.
honey, you still got to have that virtual community. Do the best you can because
Yes,
you might not be able to get out and
yes.
see this person. You might have people in other states, but baby, it's still community. Okay?
Mhm,
It
mhm.
matters. And it's not about the
It
proximity all the
does.
time of the person or their zip code,
E
but are y'all friends? Can y'all
exactly.
pray together? Can y'all get on the phone and do a Bible study, or get on the
Yes,
phone and read scriptures? And can y'all talk and just really have a good, open, honest
yes,
conversation? Can you talk to them
yes.
like a real person and not just have to be
Right.
like you're a Bible scholar all the time? Like, can y'all have real conversations? Can y'all laugh? Can y'all
The
joke? You
Oh my
know?
gosh. It really is about those types of things, because it's like, I spent most of my life, like, isolated basically, and like, or just like, not like, I wasn't even like open with myself, so I couldn't have like
Ooh.
genuine connections, because like I was so shut down. But like, since God really had it all planned out, because like I literally wouldn't have been able to appreciate, or I don't even know, like, if I would be where I am right now, because like I could have let my anxiety take control and be like, if I would have said no to one thing, like, that would have shut the door on, like,
Oh my
so
goodness.
so many good things for me. But like, God literally prepared me in 2022 to take on what I have now, like to have authentic communications and
Mm.
genuine connections and community. Like, and that's one of the things. I went to a women's conference last weekend, and Hosanna Wong spoke, and one of the things that she talked about is having real community, like how important that is to have people that can truly speak life to you and build you up and be that support when you need it. And that's it's wow, it's truly a gift from God to just have people in your life that are like that.
Yes, and also we can't discount the fact that sometimes we want to have those people, but sometimes
Mhm.
we have to be those people. And
Yes.
that is sometimes a hard road to walk when you know that you're that person, but other people may not be that person for you. And what
Mhm.
I learned is that sometimes you are, they are your assignment and you are, on assignment.
Mm.
So you have a responsibility in that season of their lives for however long it may last that y'all two are, talking to each other, that
Mhm.
you have to speak life into that person and pour into that person. And nobody said be a doormat, but
E-
it's just
exactly.
one of those
Yep.
things where you have to
Mhm.
understand sometimes you're not going to get it from the that person
Mhm.
that you pouring into. And
Mhm.
I don't know if you've been watching Keep It Positive, sweetie. That podcast be giving me life because you know some of the episodes, oh my goodness, because even Marcel was on there and she was saying, sometimes we have a tendency to think that, oh well, they can't do XYZ or they're not doing
Mhm.
XYZ, so I'm gonna be petty pendergrass and I'm not going
Mm.
to do anything. But she said, baby, it's God gonna find a way to bless you. He not gonna see you out here honoring him and just disregard that. He
Oh,
is
so
going to
true.
find a way to bless you. It may
Mhm.
not be from that person. You're gonna have to go probably get watered from somebody else.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
he gonna find a way to bless you. And
Yeah, that's
it's
so
it's
true.
it's
Yep.
such a dichotomy though, because we have to
Mhm.
know that Jesus is our ultimate waterer. He's our ultimate pourer. But we still have to find a way to reach out and pour to other people, even though they might not be able to pour to us. And
Sure.
find the other people that can.
Yes,
So
that
it's a
is
lot.
so true. That is so, so true. Because, yeah, not everybody is going to want to be
Honey,
like on
because you'll
that
be out here
same level.
disappointed.
Totally. And it's like, and that's too, like, if you literally just keep your eyes on Jesus, when you come across those people that, like, okay, like, this
He gonna give you
obviously isn't,
discernment.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, but you know what? You plant seeds no matter what. So, like,
Exactly. That's what
that's
I
just
was
all it
saying.
is.
I was on
Yeah.
another podcast and I was telling the lady that I was talking to, my sister friend, her podcast is called Life is Podcast. Y'all check that out. Um, she was saying that, we have to learn that lesson. Like we have to like understand that. And well, we were talking about that. We talking about relationships, and
Mhm.
I was like, man, yeah. Sometimes I'm just planting the seed. That's all pouring. That's all pouring is about. About being on assignment is about. You're the planting. You're planting seeds. They might not do
Yep.
anything with it, but the fact that you said it, maybe they can harken back years later and be like, oh,
Mhm.
such and such said this, and they'll finally get it. It'll finally sink in. We
Yes.
can't put a time
Yes.
limit on that, but all we have a responsibility to do is plant it and let it be
Mhm.
what it's gonna be.
Yep, exactly, because you know what? We plant the seed, but God's the one that takes care of it.
He
So,
waters
like,
it.
oh,
Okay, that's what it
yep,
says in the word.
yep,
take you
yep,
to take you over to
exactly.
Second Corinthians chapter 3. It'll tell you this.
Mhm.
So that I was like, when I found out that, I was like, when he says this, it's not just a
Mhm.
concept. He
Right.
tells you this.
Yep.
Like that thing was just so powerful to me that he waters. He
Oh my.
waters
Yep.
like,
Yep.
man.
Yeah, and I
It's
just was thinking, well, I just read in my devotion recently, like how powerful like our words really are. Like, they can speak life or death. And like, so that's why, like, if somebody's not treating you how they should be or whatever, like you said, we're not going to be doormats, but like, your words hold so much power, and something that you could just say on a whim could stick with somebody for years to come, whether it be good or bad. Like, you just
right.
you just never know. So, like, I definitely, especially because now that I realize that things that were said to me as a child literally stuck with me and made me operate out of like these, subconscious lies. And it's just so powerful. Our words are so powerful. And it's, you just have to, like you said, plant those seeds and just let God do the
Yeah.
watering.
Yeah, because okay, so let me correct that. First Corinthians chapter 3, and starting in verse 6, it says, I planted the seed in your hearts, and Apollos watered it, but it was God who made it grow. It's
Mm,
not important who does the planting or who does the watering. What's important is that God makes the seed grow.
yes.
And it goes on to say some more, but honey, that's the gist right there. First
Hmm.
Corinthians chapter 3, y'all. But that thing always speaks to me because
Yes.
I'm like, Lord, help me be like a seed planter.
Mhm,
Help me be
mhm.
a seed planter. Help me
Yeah.
have a soft heart in that way.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Because yeah, I mean, pain doesn't pain shouldn't meet pain, you know what I mean? Like, that's
Ooh,
not
you
that's
better
not
preach.
'cause that is just not the way to go. I mean, it might feel good in the moment when you're getting out what you think you need to say, but like the long-term damage that can be done for both people, just no, like
Oh
yeah,
my
it's
goodness.
hard, but it's just yeah.
Yeah, because MLK talked about that. He said we can't address hatred with hatred. We have to
Mm,
love people. And
mhm.
also, somebody else said something. They were saying that a pastor named Albert Tate. He's in the U Version Bible app sometimes. And
Okay.
he was saying that sometimes when we say things, right, we so concerned with getting stuff off our chest. But he said that
Mm,
we have to make sure that we say it in a way that the other person can receive it in their chest. So not just
yes.
saying it, but how are we saying it? How's our tone? How's
Yes.
our delivery?
Exactly, exactly. And like I feel like I'm learning all these things new, like, recently, because it's just, yeah, like your how you speak to people, and you can speak the truth in love, and
Mm.
oh, it
This is
drastically
Bible.
changes. Yes, it just changes things on so many levels.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, man, it's just so important. Like you said, we gotta speak life and we gotta have community, and so
Mhm.
that we can get poured into and we can just,
Yes.
it's a circle.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, totally.
So that brings me to the other question I wanted to ask you. You were saying about books and podcasts.
Yes.
What are some of the great books or podcasts that you listen to on this topic of faith and mental
So
health?
last year, the podcast that I listened to a lot was actually Dr. Anita Phillips.
Oh, yes.
I believe it's called In the Light
Yes.
podcast, and that really cemented like a lot of building that gap, or that, making that bridge between faith and mental health, like that.
Hmm.
It's not because we lack faith that we struggle with things in our mental health. So that podcast was amazing, and I'm actually looking forward to reading her book that you mentioned, as well. And actually the other book I read last year was, and this really helped me, was called Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen.
I
About
love her.
Oh my
I
gosh.
read Nothing Approved by her. That was so good.
Oh man, her that book, and it was like about stopping toxic, like spiraling thoughts, like because I had
Hmm.
no idea how much I lived in my own head. And
Mm.
once I started realizing, okay, I don't have to be my thoughts, like, that helped me. And then speaking God's truth into those lies,
Yes.
about how if I don't think I'm good enough, or I'm not lovable. Well, what does God say? God says he does love me.
Hmm.
So those two resources were probably the biggest ones for me that really helps, bridge that gap between faith and mental health.
My goodness, I'm telling you, it's nothing like a good podcast or a good
Oh,
book.
I
And I'm
know.
always
I
looking for
know.
something good to read. That's what I
Yes.
pretty much do on this podcast. Primarily is talk about books. And but I'm trying to go in a different direction going forward and branch out to some other things.
Mm,
Like having more of these conversations like this and just
yeah.
even going into like Christian romance type of books, maybe read something like that.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
Francine Rivers. So
Okay.
we'll
Yeah, that name
see.
sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. My cousin actually did a review on her podcast about it. She does a podcast, a show with her friend called the C and
Mm,
T Review,
okay.
and
Nice.
it's really cool. And so I was like, I haven't looked at that yet because I was like, oh, I want to like, you know how you don't want spoiler alert, you want to see what the book
Right.
gonna be
Right.
about for yourself. And apparently it's also a movie. So I was like, oh, let's see.
Oh,
We're
there you
gonna have to
go.
dive into this and branch out a little bit. So,
Yeah, all
because
different
you don't want to
topics.
spend every every moment being a theologian. So
Mhm.
it's like,
Mhm.
let
Yeah.
me read something else.
Yeah,
Maybe something
yeah.
funny or something about
Right.
marriage.
Yeah, totally
So
different things. And yeah, I mean,
yes.
just what the faith and mental health, like I feel like sharing our stories are
Mm-hmm.
can be so healing, number one, to just, talk about things that we've gone through and what's helped us. And yeah, just never stop telling your story. So
Yeah,
I think it's awesome to have a
testimony, honey.
platform, to be able to do that. So
Yes. So, one final question. Make sure plant a seed into the people about faith and mental health. If you had to say something to one person out there who is struggling with their faith,
Mm,
they're having issues with their mental health, and they feel like the two cannot coexist, that they can't be a faithful person or someone who's really, you know, rich in faith but also have the mental health struggles.
mm.
Speak into that person's life.
Well, as you were saying that, the thing that came to mind was the verse about how God will never leave you or forsake you. And, with struggling with mental health, it feels so isolating and alone sometimes. Like, eh, that there's just nothing, there's nobody there to help you. Like, there's nobody, but like God is always there. And like I said, He knows your thoughts, He knows what you're going through. Like, He created you, and you can run to him anytime. You do not have to be polished up and say, I think you have to have X, Y, and Z in order. Like, he knows. And just there, there's moments that you feel so alone, because I've been there. Obviously, I've been there where I felt so alone, and he heard me. I cried out to him and he heard me. So if you feel like you got nothing left, cry out to God. Cry out to God, because he will hear you. It says that he's close to the brokenhearted. He's with those who are crushed in spirit. Like, he knows that emotional pain or whatever you're feeling, he knows it. So just go to God. Go to God. Even when you think he's not there, he's there.
Amen, sister. So, do you have any like special projects or anything that you're doing that you want to draw attention to?
Um, no, not really. Not really. I'm just, I just try to share, different things on my Instagram or my Facebook, to just let people know that, you're not alone. Like, there's other people who feel this way. And yeah, I just try to just share my story, basically.
All right. So, do you want to share your handle so they can know where to follow you and keep up with you?
Yeah, so my Instagram, probably my Facebook too, I guess. So my handle is SLKing87.
All righty. And I will be sure to include that information in the description of this episode as
Perfect.
well. Hey y'all. So what did y'all think about that episode? Here's my takeaway. Trauma can cloud our perception and view of God. So what can we do about that? One way we can combat it is taking time to read God's word to learn about who he is for ourselves and gain clarity on his character. Another helpful solution is to be in community with fellow believers who can encourage us on our faith journey through prayer and an encouraging, kind word. Third, we can acknowledge our feelings and take time to experience them. Feelings are not facts, but we still have to manage them without dwelling in them indefinitely. This was such a great conversation. I hope it blessed y'all as much as it blessed us. Be sure to catch up with Samantha King at SLKing87. That's SLKING87 on Instagram and Samantha King on Facebook. Don't worry, all of her information will be in the description box below. Now, before I get out of here, I want to remind y'all, if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple, please do me a favor and leave a review or a rating so that more people can find out about this podcast. And while you're there, please give us a follow if this content was helpful. Also, if you have any book recommendations, you have any topic suggestions, or you want to be a guest on my podcast, or you want me to be a guest on your podcast, be sure to leave me a DM at bchannel27 on Instagram. I would really appreciate your feedback. And also, you can leave a comment on Spotify as well. Thank you so much in advance for your support. Thank you for tuning into today's episode, and peace and blessings until next time.